Welcome to another edition of Is This a Great Game or What? With my Hall of Fame dad, Tim Kurkjian. I am Jeff Kurkjian, and we're going to 3 episodes a week. That means the middle episode will be our interview, and today, with the NFL Draft kicking off on Thursday, April 24th, tomorrow, we have Mel Kiper, ESPN NFL Draft guru beyond gurus. Dad, how were we able to get him right before the draft?
Well, look, I know Mel pretty well after all these years, and I've done a bunch of radio shows with Mel. He and Dari Noka do a baseball. They do a radio show. They bring me on to do baseball. Look, Mel's from the Baltimore area. I've known him for a long time, and he's a very, very generous guy with his time and his information. So he was more than happy to do this. I'm just glad we got him because once the draft starts, Jeff, I'm sure there is no talking to Mel Kiper because his head is filled with heights and weights of tackles from Boise State. I don't know how he does it, but it is truly remarkable.
And it is remarkable how much recall he was able to have of all of his love of the game of baseball, whether it was today's game or growing up, as you mentioned, Dad, in Maryland, his favorite players, a crazy, famous Hall of Famer he ran into in a place nobody expected. Mel Kiper joins Is This a Great Game or What? Let's do it.
It is draft week in the NFL, and our guest this week is my friend Mel Kiper, ESPN draft expert. Mel, this is my son, Jeff.
Honored to be with you guys. And Jeff, your father always took time during the busy baseball season when I know he was swamped, and he would get a call to come on Dari and Mel. And Tim never said no, never let us down. He came on. He had a wealth of information, never rushed off. It was amazing. So, Tim, I can't thank you enough. We both land of pleasant living, crab cakes, right? We love baseball. We grew up with it. And here I am with talking football, which is, nobody would have thought back a long time ago that's what I would be doing.
All right, Mel, we might not ask you a football question today, and we will get to baseball in a minute, but please just clear up a few things.
Okay.
Do you eat a piece of pumpkin pie for breakfast every morning? Explain, please.
All right, almost every morning. Sometimes, like this time of year, you can't get pumpkin pie. There's a Safeway delivery coming right now. It's above, right? But the bottom line is you can't always get them. And the pumpkin pies are kind of seasonal. So when Kim will make a pumpkin pie, homemade, I don't like it as much. So she makes great food, but pumpkin pies have to be a certain way for me, or I don't eat them. So no, I can't say it's every morning. It's probably 8 to 9 months out of the year. So what I do then is I make my own brownies with my fat-free whipped cream. So I have a little alternative plan. Brownies I just made because I don't have any pumpkin pie in the house right now. So I have to live without it for 3 or 4 months and survive. But I'd say 9 months out of the year, 8 months out of the year, pumpkin pie, not just in the morning. I'll go through a pumpkin pie in every day, day and a half.
Wow. Mel, what is wrong with you? Do you just love pumpkin pie, or is this just who you are when it comes to food?
Tim, it's even worse, Jeff and Tim. I don't eat the crust. I just eat the pumpkin. I have fat-free whipped cream. Say, well, what's the method to the madness? All the hydrogenated oils are in the crust. Okay? So I stay away from the crust. Don't touch the crust. Just eat the filling. And then I have my fat-free ready whipped cream and a glass of fat-free milk. And that's what I do. That's how I get by.
Listen, Mel, I have never felt so connected to a guest before because every Thanksgiving season, I always get the standard, are you going to have any pie with your whipped cream? Because I like to fill it up to a point where you can't even see it.
Jeff, if I have a piece or two of pumpkin pie, I'll go through 1 can of whipped cream with just a piece or two of pumpkin pie. I go through 2 or 3 cans a day. That's not a lie. 2 or 3 cans a day. For the I do radio in New York with Rothenberg and DiPietro. They send me, so we're coming on, 25 to 30 cans of fat-free ready whipped cream because they know how I need that whipped cream for my pumpkin. I can't eat pumpkin pie without whipped cream. If there's no whipped cream in the house, I'm not eating pumpkin pie. Pumpkin pie without whipped cream is like Kurkjian without baseball, me without the draft. And we ain't doing it. So at the end of the day, it's got to be them melded together with a glass of fat-free milk because you need that as well. So it takes 3 to get it done. And without that, I got nothing.
All right, so Mel, you brought up Kim, your wife. When I emailed you this afternoon to make sure you were okay for 3 o'clock, I got an email back from your wife. Is this clear that she runs your entire life?
Without Kim, it wouldn't be a life. It wouldn't be anything. I don't know what would be happening. I certainly wouldn't be doing a podcast with you right now. Wouldn't be having anything going on that we do because technically I have no clue about any of this stuff. My father even said when we started, you just worry about answering the phones. You talk to your customers. You talk to the people getting your reports, and you do the work. I'm going to handle all the things business-wise. Kim does all that. I don't have a clue about anything. If something happened now, I'd be yelling back to Kim to come fix it because I wouldn't know where to start. I'll probably hit a button and screw everything up. So, no, without Kim, there wouldn't be any operation here, and certainly my life would have been a lot different.
Mel, is it true you've never written a check? Did I hear that properly?
Never written a check. Never used an ATM card. Never used an ATM card, written a check. No, can't say I ever have. No, that's not a lie. That's the truth. And Kim can attest to that. No, never have.
Well, I have to say, I married my wife, Emily, back in 2022. She is incredible. She handles our taxes, our finances. I'm starting to become, like Mel, a little bit inept in anything. If I had to see how much money was in my 401k, I wouldn't be able to figure it out. She just says, hey, text me that code that just got sent to your phone. I'm
You're
already
right.
getting that way.
Hey, I don't know where a dollar of it is. I couldn't tell you. Kim knows where it all is. If I need it, I get it. I don't know where a dollar of it is. I can tell you that right now. If you said, hey, if you needed something, you need a loan, I'd love to, but I don't know where the heck to get the money anyway. So call Kim.
All right, so Mel, is it true you don't know your cell phone number or you didn't know your cell phone number?
Well, this is the crazy part. I use Kim's cell. It's my cell and Kim's. I text to Kim's cell because I don't care about cell phones. She'll get the message. I'll respond. I have a cell phone right in here that I only take to the draft. Now, I give that number out to my friends. I say, call it. They call it all year. Once the draft's over and I come back from Green Bay, it goes in here and I never check it again. So any messages come to that cell phone never get checked after I get back from Green Bay. It's only for 5 days. That's what. Or when I go out, I take that phone with me in case of an emergency, right? Outside of that, I'm not checking anything. Kim's cell only or emails. That's it.
And you have a landline in your house?
Oh, yeah. We have landline there. Everywhere's landlines. And why? There's method to the madness there, too, because I know very few people have landlines. Think I'm crazy. When you do radio shows, Tim, if the Comrex is an issue, then I have a landline to do a interview on rather than the cell phone. So I always had it for that. Right now we do it on the Comrex, but if the Comrex is down for some reason, the landline rather than a cell phone, because cell phones are frustrating because sometimes they just don't work right. Sometimes you'll lose this connection. So I kept the landline for that reason. I'm old school with that too. And probably, how many percentage of the country? 10% of the country? I don't even know what percentage of the country has a landline now, but we do.
Our guest last week was Syracuse former head coach Jim Boeheim, right? I'm a Syracuse graduate. And in order to get him on the show, I was told to text his wife, Julie Boeheim. And the funniest part is, Mel, I have Julie Boeheim's number, not because I was reporting, not because I was doing that. It's because I was the mascot at Syracuse. Wow. And while a student, I had to do an event for the Jim and Julie Boeheim Foundation. And she said, I don't want a mascot driving all the way out there and spending money on gas. I'll pick up the mascot. Wow. So I sat shotgun with Julie Boeheim for an hour there and an hour back. Oh, thankfully, I wasn't dressed as the orange in the car. I went as Jeff. But that is why I had her number. Wow. So we were able to set it up through Julie.
That's a great story. Oh, my gosh. That's exactly the way it is here. Everything goes through Kim. It's amazing. I always say, if you're going to overachieve in marriage. And I majorly overachieved.
Absolutely. All right. So, Mel, where did your love of baseball come from? And at what age and where did you get it from?
Father was baseball all along, Tim. He played, coming up through the ranks. Thought he could maybe even move on, but then he got hurt his shoulder. Had to give up baseball, but ended up coaching and playing. I just was brought in that environment of baseball and, loved the sport. Obviously with the Baltimore Orioles, and grew up with, an Earl Weaver, and then watched the Orioles all the way through with the great Brooks Robinson and Frank Robinson and Belanger and Boog Powell, Etcha Barron, Paul Blair playing that shallow center field, tracking the ball better than anybody. So when you have all those, and then the 420 game winners, and growing up with Jim Palmer when he was coming along, and Palmer, McNally, Cuellar, and Dobson, the last 420 game winners. So, just all the great base, and a huge fan of Earl Weaver's, obviously. And then we had the Cal Ripken era. So it's just been, when you grow up in that environment of winning, and all those personalities and all those Hall of Fame players, it was easy to be a great baseball fan. Now, ironically, I was a big Dodger fan too, Tim and Jeff. I loved the Dodgers. I loved everything in LA. I grew up a big Rams fan, not a Colts fan early on. A big Rams. I loved Roman Gabriel, Myron Patios, Les Josephson, Jack Snow, the fearsome foursome. Loved the Rams. But then the Dodgers, going back to Walter Austin, then Tommy Lasorda. So Albuquerque, as you know, Tim, providing all those players to the LA Dodgers through the minor league system, and then going through when Say and Russell and Lopes and Garvey, and you had Yeager and had Toy Cannon, Jim Wynn, and all those great players, and Rick Monday, and then the pitchers, all the guys, Andy Messersmith during those Andy Messersmith days, going back to Tommy John, before Sandy, and Sandy Koufax, obviously, but then those great pitchers, and then Mike Marshall and all the things he did. Remember the kinesiology major Mike Marshall was and all. So it was just the Dodgers, think about the Dodgers and the Orioles, two great organizations to love. So that's how I grew up with those entities. I remember keeping the score of the Dodger games when I was a kid. Every game, final score, winning pitcher. And I kept that all the way through, and any notes about the game. Back in those days, you couldn't watch anything. So the radio, I'd be listening to the Dodgers against the Phillies. I listened to Philly broadcasts. So you had to radio was a big avenue and a big vehicle to be able to listen to these games. I did it with football. Tulane LSU games, and it would be fading in and out. You'd be listening on Saturday night to those games. And I did it with baseball. My father always had a radio with him. He'd go to bed, he'd take the radio, listening to games, listening to baseball, listening to whatever was going on. And he was listening to sports talk even back in the day. So radio was a big part of my life in the early years as well.
Mel, did you ever meet Brooks Robinson, Frank Robinson?
I did.
What was that
did.
like?
It was unbelievable. Brooks, I ran into Brooks at Joseph Bank shopping for turtlenecks and sweaters. And there would be Brooks with Connie there. And it would start talking, and he loved, and he'd be, we had our seats at the Raven Stadium at M&T Bank. Steve Bisciotti was right above us. Okay. And he'd have all the people there, and look up. Brooks was right there. Up talking to Brooks during a football game, right up in Steve box. And I'd go up even at halftime. Steve would say, come on up. And Brooks would be there. And Gary Williams would be there, as you know, Tim. So, it was great. But Brooks was, I say, the nicest man of any sports personality, figure, player I've met a lot of different sports figures, players. And Brooks was, as you know, Tim and Jeff, he was one of a kind. And the nicest, most humble man I've ever been around in my life, for the greatness of Brooks Robinson. We're number 5 at Lock Raven Optimist because of Brooks Robinson. Okay. That's Brooks Robinson. Jim Palmer wore 22 early on. So you wore numbers of your Jim Palmer, Brooks Robinson. Those were numbers. And later on, I was a big Burt Jones fan. Loved that number 7. Burt Jones growing up. You grew up with, think about that, John Unitas, Burt Jones with the Baltimore Colts. Should have had John Elway. One of the reasons why the Colts left town. John Elway didn't become a Baltimore Colt. He was traded to the Denver Broncos without Ernie Accorsi's knowledge. I was going to go work for Ernie Accorsi and the Colts. That fell through because of that. And then 5 months later, I'm working at ESPN. I'd have never been at ESPN if it wasn't for that. So it's crazy how history would have been rewritten for me.
Mel, you just talking about baseball, you sound like so many other people where you're almost transported back to being a child, right?
Yeah.
Like there's and nothing against football and basketball and all of these sports, but isn't there something beautiful about baseball? Recall a memory. You were talking about your dad keeping score. Take us back to young Mel Kiper when you were at a game and something just really stuck out to you that made you think, wow, is this a great game or what?
I think, well, first game I went to was the 66 World Series. Wow. So that was the first game. I was 5, 6 years old. So I didn't even turn 6. Just turned 6. And then you go to, I think, Tim, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, you and Paul Molitor's first game. I think one of the first games Paul Molitor played was at
against the Orioles, yes.
And I was out there watching that game, and Paul Molitor, and I said, boy, he looks like he could be really good. And look what Paul Molitor developed into. So, and I remember, and I used to love nothing was better for a kid than a doubleheader. And back in remember we had the true doubleheader, and I loved going to doubleheaders at Memorial Stadium. And my aunt lived right around the stadium, so go there, park there, and walk over. Go there after school at Calvert Hall, whether it was weekends or whatever. So no, I went to probably as a kid roughly 25 to 30 Oriole games a year. as many as I could go to at that particular time. So yeah, always opening day. We'd all make sure we went to opening day if we always could. But playoff games, I remember being out there when it was snow flurrying at some games at Memorial Stadium. I love Memorial Stadium. And also what I loved as a kid, and Jeff, I don't think you'll ever, and most kids will never see this, I love to be able in September to be at an Oriole game on a Tuesday, Wednesday, and see the outline of the football field, knowing that on Sunday, I'm going to be watching the Baltimore Colts play. Wow. It was just a great feeling to be in that stadium, knowing, okay, I love what I'm seeing here with baseball, and then on Sunday, I'm going to be watching the Baltimore Colts, or I just saw the Colts, now I'm watching the Orioles. And those stadiums where they were dual purpose, multi-purpose, was great for a kid. It was just a great feeling, and you don't get it now because it's great. Hey, I love these stadiums. I love what they do, but it was also great for a kid to be able to sit there saying, boy, it's like you're home away from home. And I'm going to be back on Sunday here watching the Baltimore Colts play on the same field, same stadium. That's what I loved. And a lot of kids, I think, don't have that level of enjoyment anymore because of that.
Yeah, your memory transported me back and helped me remember this. The 1999 World Series, I was 6 years old when Tino Martinez hit a grand slam at Yankee Stadium.
98.
98. Okay, so I was 5 years old. And isn't it amazing? I remember the roar of the crowd, the excitement around that home run. And I was 5, but that's what baseball does, is it captivates you.
It does. And the memories, early memories I have, I remember being even playing when I was a kid down at Mount Pleasant. Okay. Mount Pleasant's field up at Yorkwood. We used to play up at Yorkwood field up there, and then down at Mount Pleasant. So even as a player, you remember when you first, had that bat in your hand, had that glove in your hand. And it's the first thing I ever knew was baseball. It was, and going to games when I was probably even earlier than that. The one I remember is that one, but I probably was dragged out to a game earlier even that. And then after that, once it's in your blood and you love it. And it's just something about it, to be able to sit there like on a Saturday. And then Tim knows this. What helped in terms of getting that love and that passion and that looking forward to. We didn't have games on every night. I can go in there and I have it. I love watching the late night games because that's when it frees up time for me. It's at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And I love watching the West Coast games. I love that because everything calms down. The phone's not ringing. Don't need anything else to be done from an ESPN standpoint, and I can relax and enjoy that. But as a kid, the only games we had were Oriole games. And then we had Saturday at, as you know, Tim, 2:15, right? Joe Garagiola, Tony Kubek, doing that 2:15 game on Sunday. That's the first time on Saturday afternoon at 2:15 Eastern we had a chance to watch the National League or other teams. Then Monday Night Baseball started, where we were just watching the Orioles. So you really look forward to that Saturday afternoon. They gave us a doubleheader. It was great. But that Saturday afternoon at 2:15 Eastern with Garagiola and Kubek, it was one for the books. And then we remember all the great broadcasters. And that's what I always remember as well. Those were the ones. Those individuals, I think, contributed to the love of the game, the love of the sport. Were the great broadcasters as well. I always say the voices of the sport, the voices of football, the voices of baseball, and that's something that is in your memory bank forever. And luckily, fortunately, you can go to the internet now and pull those games. I do it a lot. I'll go back and watch a game, a Colt game from back at Memorial Stadium. Remember the Christmas Eve game against the Raiders in the late 70s? An overtime game ruined my Christmas when we lost that game. Remember the ghost to the post and all that. So, those are things you can go back and watch the Orioles from days ago. Watch Weaver arguing that in the Tiger game. Earl flipping the hat, kicking the dirt. I mean, Earl Weaver was unbelievable. And all those personalities of the Orioles. And I referenced Paul Blair, Tim, the other day. In terms of tracking the ball. They go about receiver. I said, nobody tracked the ball better than Paul Blair. He played that shallow center field and nothing got by him. Nothing went over his head. He'd get to the warning track. He was great, a great player to watch. So luckily, Tim, we had great players, great teams to grow up with. And when I watched the Dodgers or listened to the Dodgers, I had great players there to watch as well.
Mel, we do a segment on the show where we have people send us voice notes for I am a seam head, right? It's them admitting something that maybe, you don't talk about on a first date with a woman, but between us fans of the game, you would go, wow, that's impressive. Like knowing one guy sent us a note that he knows who made the final out of every World Series in the last 65 years, right? So not asking you to be that nerdy or that impressive, whatever way we want to look at it, but is there something in baseball that you love, something about the numbers, something about a stat, something about those teams growing up that makes you a bit of a seam head?
Well, I remember stirrups and sanitaries back in the day, Timmy. It's the one thing I wish they had a dress code in baseball. I wish we could get back to that instead of the sweatpant look, where the sweat. I wish we could get back to that. But baseball's changed over the years. But in terms of, I always gravitated to the uniform and the numbers and remembering the numbers. That's what we do in football. You remember more the number than the player's name immediately. And then you would always keep scores. I always try to keep score as many Oriole games when they were playing on the road. They'd be playing in Cleveland, wherever they were playing, keep score of the game. I still have that back there. I can show you some of the games I kept score of back in the 70s, early 70s. So it lends itself to baseball because of the pace of the game. Now they have all these different things going on. I don't understand, Tim. You have to explain to me some of the things going on. It used to be just, RBIs and the batting average. And that he got a million ways with analytics to evaluate a baseball player. But it was a little simpler back then. But, I think the numbers and the stats and everything that went involved with baseball, and now it led to analytics. And I always say for football, I was kind of doing analytics before it became in vogue. I was always keeping track of how many of this position did well. Running backs, I started that trend of not taking a running back in the first round. Everybody's kind of jumping on that bandwagon. So you try to do a little analytics with everything you do. And certainly for baseball, it's huge. And in football now, it's taken over. As you know, Tim and Jeff, now football is all about analytics as well. So, and the draft is kind of about analytics. So it all ties together, these two sports in a lot of ways. And then watching some guys like Kirk Gibson. Kirk Gibson, I wrote up from Michigan State as a heck of a wide receiver. He could have been great in the NFL. But baseball stole Tim. You stole Kirk. You got to play baseball, and then with the Dodgers, ruining the A's, and Dennis Eckersley when he was hurt. You didn't even know if he was going to play, and he hits that dramatic home run. And here's Kirk Gibson, who I wrote up as a football player. Could have been a great wide receiver with his size, his physicality, his ball skills, his hand-eye coordination, and all that. But he ended up playing baseball. And so you always had that type of thing, too, where you had great athletes. It's just, what sport were they? John Elway even threatened to play baseball when he was drafted member by the Colts. I'm going to play baseball, and they traded him to Denver. So the memories I have too of some of those guys that could do everything. We talked about how great Travis Hunter is. Kirk Gibson was an unbelievable athlete back in the day, and a lot of those baseball players could have played. Dave Winfield, what did he get drafted in? 3 sports, Tim?
Yes, he did. So Mel, you know a lot about baseball. You have an encyclopedic memory about football. I know baseball, basketball, and sitcoms from the 60s, and that's all I know. Does your memory bank work for things other than baseball and football? Can you remember phone numbers? Can you remember things when you and your wife would go out? How does that work?
I don't remember much of anything beyond this stuff, Tim. I really don't. I mean, and even people always will ask me about a lot of things from the draft going back. And I do remember a lot of what went on back in the 1970s when I started. But going forward, we're always looking for the next prospect, Tim. You're always looking for the next great player coming out of high school into college. And I'm a big college football fan as well. You got to be. I grew up loving college football, loving the great voices of college football. I was a huge Chris Schenkel fan back in the day. Got a chance to talk to Bill Fleming back in the day, who was unbelievable voice of college football as well with the College Football Today. The only time we got highlights was that Sunday with College Football Today, leading into NFL Today. That was all Bill Fleming. He'd be up all night, Tim, Saturday night, driving all over to get to a studio to put all that together so we could see highlights of 6 games, see the band at halftime, stadiums we didn't see because we didn't watch those, weren't able to watch those games on TV. And Bill Fleming provided a lot of that as well. So I grew up the Howard Cosell and all the great broadcast, Keith Jackson. I mean, the great broadcast, Lindsey Nelson. I mean, that's why I say the voices of sports for me. I go Gradual and Kubek. That's what I think grabbed you as a kid and just you maintained that love and that passion. You couldn't miss, and you knew that voice. And you really watched it as much for the game as the voice and the broadcaster that's covering that game. Okay, you had a certain feeling about it when you watched it, when that broadcaster and that voice was calling that game. So for me, I don't look back as often as I look forward now, Tim. So my memory, no, I don't remember much at all. Kim has to remind me a lot of things that were going on or with scheduling or this, that, and phone numbers. Some, not a lot. I have, if I took you back to the office, Tim, all your viewers, your millions of viewers, Tim, would be looking at somebody say, is he nuts? In a drawer next to me, I have ripped off papers of phone numbers that I tried to put them together the best I can, but it's totally disorganized. When I have to find a number, I have to go through like 10, 12 sheets of paper that have all these numbers to find the number of the person I'm looking for. So it's just, and I kind of like doing that. I don't mind if I would, it just gives me something to, I'll go through it. But I have that back in the office as well. I got all kinds of books back there on baseball. If I look back there, it's kind of a memorabilia. Pete Rose signing different things, different autographs from all different people. The helmet phone from the 1994 draft that Freddie Goodell gave me, the ESPN helmet phones back there. It was the Bill Tobin year. So you go back there, there's tons of memorabilia back there in my office from baseball. I got St. Louis Cardinal cap back there. I got the Michigan Ohio State one back there. I got tons of stuff back there. I'm big into that memorabilia. I used to have the baseball cards back, and they got tons of them, Tim. Millions boxes of baseball cards from back in the day. So, yeah, that's the office back there. If you ever want to take a look. And I got letters I kept from George Young and all Bill Walsh and Don Shula when I would send them the reports. I've kept all those letters and a book back there, so I have all that. So I go back there and check it out every once in a while. It's great to relive some of those things you were getting back, like say, in the 70s and 80s from those legends in the National Football League.
Mel, the baseball cards, did you play with them? Did you flip them? Did you trade them? Or did you just save them in a box?
I saved them in a box. And I have box after box, with the rubber band around them, the piles of stacks that I've kind of organized by team or whatever. And they're back there. And, yes, you could trade. I just kept them and saved them. I like looking back at them. They had a little gum in there with them, a piece of gum, and it was something about and my uncle had a grocery store. So he had baseball cards. He was on the grocery store. So I'd always going over to the grocery store with my uncle, and I'd grab a pack of cards, and it just kept going and going from the time I was 5, 6 years old all the way up to my teen years. Card after card after card, and box after box of baseball cards. And I didn't do it much for I have some football cards, but it was baseball cards that you kind of gravitated to. I have some for football, a decent amount, but baseball is probably 10-1 in terms of the ratio of baseball cards to football cards.
Now, okay. Mel, really fast. This is a first in podcast history. As I mentioned before we hit record, my 20-month-old, it's my dad and I in the basement recording with Mel Kiper, and she woke up. And I didn't think this would happen, so McKinley is just appearing now.
Hi, Papa. McKinley. Hey, McKinley.
Hi, Papa. Can you say hi? Say hi. Good job, love. Aww. So you had mentioned before we got on the air, you have an 8-month-old grandchild, right?
Granddaughter Blakely Grace. Yeah.
Oh, adorable. This is McKinley Hope. Can you tell us a little bit? First of all, this is Pop Pop, is what he's called. What is your grandfather name? Have you been gifted one yet?
We've tried. Kim's been throwing a different one. Blakely's just starting. Mom, dad, whatever. But I said I'll let Blakely decide. Whatever she wants is fine with me. Kim's deciding whatever she wants to be. Then Steve and Sharon, Alex's parents, they're deciding what they're going to be. I think Steve's going to be Pop. And then I don't think Sharon's decided yet. That's Alex's parents, my son-in-law. So I said, leave it up to Blakely. Whatever Blakely wants to call me, I'm fine with. And she's an angel. So, we have her pictures Lauren gave us for Christmas where the pictures just rotate back there. So every time I walk in here, I got Blakely. So, we keep in contact with Lauren pretty much all day. FaceTiming gives us a chance. I haven't been able to see her for doing all this stuff for the draft for the last week. And I think we might get out there Saturday. But, it's amazing. So for McKinley and for Blakely, couldn't be happier. Like I say, it's great. She will be an athlete. I guarantee that. Alex was a great volleyball player at Stevenson University. That's where Lauren and Alex met, at Stevenson University. He was a volleyball player out of Pennsylvania. Steeler fan, by the way, Tim and Jeff. And then Lauren, athlete through high school, playing all 3 sports. She played, golf. She does really good golfer, but she played in high school 3 different sports, and she got the C. Marklin Kelly Award for the best senior in her school. So she was athletic, and Alex is athletic, and so I would think Blakely. We're not going to force her, but I can always see, Tim. I put that little ball in her hand. I can see her throwing. I don't know, and she throws left and right. So I don't know what she is yet, but she's gonna. I think she'll be an athlete. She's gonna be tall. Alex is 6'4", so I always predicted she'd probably be 5'10", 5'11". So we'll see. Like I say, Alex is 6'4", and looks like Blakely's going to be tall as well.
Well, listen, combined, I don't think my wife and I are the size of your son-in-law. My wife's 4'10", and I'm barely 5'6". So I think we either have a jockey on our hands or a theater kid. I don't know if Ashley might be
whatever
in
it works, it's all fine. It all works. I grew up with Tim, Freddie Patek, one of my favorites with the Kansas City Royals. Monty Tao, who was a guard with remember that great NC State Wolfpack basketball
Number
team.
25, yes, I know all the little guys, of course.
Yeah, the Freddie Patek, the shortstop at the Royals during all those great years. So, yeah, that's like I say, that's the thing about baseball, too, where in football you can as well. But in baseball, size, who cares? Like I say, you can play the game. And it's amazing, though, when I see baseball players now, the ability to see that ball and hit that ball and elevate that ball and just do the things they do with that fastball. Tim, it's coming in at 90. If you throw less than 95 now, it's like everybody's at 97, 98, 100 miles an hour. I don't know how to hit the ball. I mean, to have that ability to see that ball coming in and movement the way these pitchers have, it's amazing they can hit the ball with the consistency they do. And what Ohtani's doing is amazing. I mean, Travis Hunter is the closest thing coming out this year playing both ways. But what Ohtani does, what these baseball players do in general, when you get on that field and you get at that plate and you see how close that pitcher is, on TV, you don't get a real good feel for that. But when you're at that plate and you see how close that pitcher is, it's amazing that these hitters in Major League Baseball are able to do what they do because these pitchers are bringing it. And I don't know how they do it, Tim, but they are amazing athletes. And like I say, Ted Williams, didn't they have the best eyesight of anybody, Tim, back in the day? The great Ted Williams.
Unbelievable, yes. All right.
Eyesight and be able to spot, just to be able to do that to me is awe-inspiring. So when I watch this on TV, you really don't get it. That's why I like to sit behind home plate and in football be in the end zone and watch the plays develop because you really don't get an appreciation for how difficult it is to hit a baseball. Just put it in play. It is amazing what these guys do.
Said it a million times, Mel. Average fan gets 1,000 at bats in the big leagues. He gets 0 hits. He puts no balls in play. He might not even make contact. That's how hard it is. All right, McKinley Hope is on the move. So, Mel, we are going to let you go only because we have a 16-month-old.
McKinley said enough of that.
And Mel, the best part is that this is what the show is all about. This is it's a family podcast, right? We're not breaking down, Ohtani's change of his swing. We're not doing the important stuff you do analyzing these players. So to talk about you being a grandfather, to talk about your love of the game, I mean, that is what this show is all about.
Well, Jeff and Tim, next year, I promise you, I'll have Blakely sitting here right with me when we do this. If we do it again, I'll hopefully have Blakely sitting here right with me.
That's a great idea.
It's a great idea. Mel, thank you so much for joining us in the middle of your busiest time ever. We really appreciate it.
Tim, you could call me the night before the draft. I'll do it. Tim, you're the best. You've been a great friend over the years. I have great respect and admiration for the work you do. Nobody does it better. And Jeff, I'll tell you, fun to be with you guys. So, yeah, keep it going. Tim, work till you're 150, pal, because like I said, I love watching you.
Right. That's next year, Mel. So, yes.
Dad, a great line to end the interview with Mel Kiper. Thank you to Mel for joining us. And I mean, I'm a firm believer, Dad, that if there's 2 guys in this industry who are going to work until they're 150, it's you and Mel Kiper.
All right. If I get to 70, that's 2 more years, Jeff. It will be a miracle. But I really believe that Mel...
Don't say that.
Mel is timeless. He is a lunatic, and that is the ultimate compliment. You heard what he talked about. He's got slips of paper all over his office of phone numbers. It was absolutely priceless, and he loves football so much that I can't imagine the draft happening without Mel Kiper. So, God bless him for being this enthusiastic and this energetic for anything after all the years that he's done it. He is a national treasure on so many levels.
Tomorrow morning on Is This a Great Game or What? Another episode for you, including, Dad, the greatest number 9 of all time from Ozzie to Oral. Am I correct?
Yes, and the greatest number 10. And as a tribute to Mel Kiper and the NFL draft, we'll have the all Major League Baseball college football team, guys that played collegiately and then went on to play in the major leagues.
New episodes Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, wherever you love to listen. Don't forget to hit subscribe and share the podcast with somebody you know who loves this game as much as we do. Thank you for listening, and as always, thank you for being a part of our family.